We have a 2009 Toyota Highlander Hybrid with the MZ-FE V6 engine. We'll be doing a timing belt and water pump replacement. The brake reservoir and master cylinder sits on the right side instead of the left side, so this will have to get moved out of the way. And the battery is also here on the right side, and we'll be moving that out of the way. We're going to start the repair procedure from underneath the right front wheel. Alright, these are 21mm lug nuts. You have to remove this splash guard. You got two 10mm bolts here. Push pin behind here. Okay, the most difficult thing to do on this engine is getting that crankshaft pulley bolt off. So I learned that using this 22mm high mass impact socket does a wonderful job of taking this pulley bolt off. See that? No problem. Since this is a hybrid, this vehicle has an electronic AC compressor. It has a electronic power steering pump, so you don't have any belts driving anything on this engine. But the harmonic balancer has the grooves for the belts, but there's just no belts in this configuration. This balancer is coming off with no resistance, which is a good thing for me. I don't have to use my harmonic balancer removal tool, but I'll show you how that works anyway. But if this gets stuck, you would use my balancer removal tool. Power steering pump used to be over here with the non-hybrid version, and I would have to move the power steering pump bracket up and down to get access to these two bolts. These are the mounting bolts for the tensioner pulley tensioner. We start by removing the lower timing belt cover, so there's a bunch of 10mm bolts. So there's 4 bolts I removed. This mounting point over here overlaps the top cover, so that's why you remove the bottom cover first. And we'll be taking this off. I'm going to remove the battery because the battery is sitting in front of the timing cover. We got to move this brake fluid reservoir off to the side over here. There's 2 bolts, bracket bolts over here. I have to detach these 2 lines and plug them up. Okay, so these are rubber plugs that I removed from a new radiator. So I'm going to use these to plug the ports for the brake reservoir. And to plug the line, I'll use these 1/4 inch short extensions. There. Okay, I just need to move this a little bit out of the way. I'll use a bungee cord. I'm going to take this off. And we've got another one over here. Alright, so you pull this pin out, then pull on the harness. There's one. Push that pin up to the side, then pull up. Push on that, then pull. So now I'll remove these 10mm bolts holding the top timing belt cover. The backmost cover, you got to use a small ratchet wrench. It's a 1/4 inch with a 10mm. What you could do is get that last bolt from underneath the car. And then the top bolts you can get from above. And I'm using my electric ratchet wrench. There. Now I'll be removing this side motor mount bracket. So you got 2 bolts and 2 nuts diagonally opposed to each other. Alright, I'm going to bring the engine to top dead center. Okay, there's an alignment dot over here, and I'll rotate the engine till it gets to this hump mark. So that should be dead center right there. We have to verify the cam marks. The camshaft mark is over here, and it should be up here to line up with this notch. So I have to rotate the crankshaft another 360 degrees. See, that is in alignment with this. There's a washer behind the bracket, don't lose it. So I took the remnants of the old timing belt, so this chain strap wrench won't mar any of the contact surfaces of the camshaft pulley. Or you could take a small piece of your old timing belt, so it just makes contact with these points on the chain strap wrench. Okay, so this is my seal removal tool. Just go in on an angle like this, and then turn in to the seal, then find a leverage point, and then pull. There you go. For the lower crankshaft seal, I use my paint can remover, and I use a long 1/2 inch extension for leverage to pull on it. Now I just pull there. So now we'll coat the seals with dielectric grease. So this is my seal seating tool. It's a perfect diameter of the seal, and this is a stud that threads into the hole of the camshaft. This only requires finger pressure to seat it in. If you can't get in with your fingers, you could take a PVC pipe of equal diameter and press it in that way. So we're going to remove the water pump, and we have a cement mixer here to capture all the coolant that's going to be leaking out when we remove the pump. Now we'll wire brush the contact surfaces, make sure it's good and clean. There's like virtually no corrosion on those contact surfaces. So here's the new metal gasket. And the new water pump. So you take your index finger over here so that when your finger feels a stud, then you got an easy way to line it up with the hole. So I angle it in like this. I feel the stud going into the hole, and then I watch the top stud, and then it just lines up perfect there. So there's 3 bolts on this side, and there's 3 nuts on that side. So I use a 1/4 inch socket wrench so that I don't run the risk of over torquing the nuts and bolts and potentially shearing them off. And I do a crisscross pattern to even out the tension. Now some people may say I should be using a torque wrench, but we're only talking around 7 foot-pounds of torque, and if that torque wrench isn't 100% accurate, you can shear these nuts and bolts off. So I prefer doing it by hand. Besides, it's only 10 millimeter. When you put paint marks on the sprocket and the backing plate, it makes the job of installing the belt go that much easier. And if the sprocket jumps, you could realign it with no problem. So the cam sprocket jumped, so I'm just putting it back into its normal position. I think that should be about right. When you're putting back on the cam sprocket, make sure the pin lines up with the pinhole. There's the pin. Okay, so if you don't want to use a chain strap wrench, another method where you can secure the cam sprocket from moving is to use universal sprocket holding tool like this. We'll put a little dielectric grease right here for the bottom sprocket. It'll provide some corrosion protection. So here's the new Toyota Highlander pulley. Just torquing the bolt down. So here's the new belt. These are the alignment marks for the camshafts. And this is the alignment mark for the crankshaft. Notice these arrows here, they're pointing out towards the right fender. So we're going to start by mounting the belt on the rear camshaft first. I aligned the timing belt alignment mark with the mark on the cam sprocket. So the rear sprocket is slightly forward, so that's why we have a little bit of slack here with the front sprocket, which works in our favor because we didn't have to go through a big hassle moving the cam to get it lined up with the alignment mark on the belt. So if the back is lined up, I would probably have to move this cam sprocket back a little bit to mount the belt and then move the cam back again. Okay, so to ease mounting of the belt, I'm going to move the crankshaft slightly counterclockwise, and then I'll move it back to the top dead center mark, and if there's no slack on the belt, then we have perfect alignment. There. Now, if you see these little dots here, they're lined up with an alignment dot on the crank pulley. Alright, let's see if we can get the belt on the left side over the tensioner pulley. If there's enough slack. Alright, now we'll bring it back to top dead center. See, we're all in alignment now. I made sure there was no slack on the right side so that you have enough slack to put the new tensioner on over here. So here's a new tensioner. This long bolt goes on the bottom, short on top, and we have a grenade release pin over here. When we pull the pin out, then the plunger is going to extend outward and put pressure on the tensioner pulley. We're at top dead center over here. We are at the paint alignment mark belt to the alignment mark on the pulley. We're at the alignment mark over here. Take this off. And we're at the alignment mark in the rear. Now we'll pull the grenade pin or retention pin for the tensioner. Now it's time to just put everything back together. So that bottom bolt has to go in with the side mount as you're installing the bracket. Alright, we reinstalled the harmonic balancer and torqued on the pulley bolt. There's a relief valve right over here. Okay, now we just have to start it up. There we go. Just put my foot on the accelerator and the engine went on. Now we just have to let the engine warm up. And we're done.